today's session. Scale your MSP, scale your MSP, drive efficiency and revenue with Resolve MDM. And today's speaker, go ahead and join me on stage. We have Tony Taylor, Global Lead of MSPs. Hi, Tony, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. And I will go ahead and throw it over to you, Tony. Have a great session. Let me know if you need anything.
All right, great. Well, thank you for kicking this off, and thanks everybody for joining today. I would like to start with just a quick poll question. I always like to start to just kind of get a little bit of a sense of here in the audience of kind of where we're at. And so our first poll question is, are you currently using an MDM solution? Thought to kind of get the juices flowing here. So we'll pop out Danny, if you can administer the poll here. We'll give it a second so folks can weigh in. About another maybe 30 seconds or so. All right. Seeing some folks coming in here. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here about another 10 seconds. Get everybody get their last final thing in here. Okay. All right, so we'll close this out. All right. Always good to kind of get a baseline of when we think about when we have these events of just kind of where everybody's at as far as on the spectrum. But before we get too far into the program itself, let me start with just a little bit of an agenda here and kind of set the stage. So, in today's evolving threat landscape, MSPs face the dual challenge of protecting clients, but also building sustainable revenue, right? That is kind of, that's why MSPs are in business to generate revenue. And so, as we look through the agenda, we'll spend a little bit of time about just the overall challenges that MSPs are facing as it relates to MDM. We will talk a little bit about why MDM matters more than ever and why in my opinion, MDM is now more of a cornerstone in today's tech stack. We do have some pretty cool real world examples. So from some of our pre-existing partners we have, talk about some of the successes they're having just to get some good insight. We will also talk a little bit about just the overall impact that MDM can have to the business. And then lastly, we'll leave plenty of time at the end for Q&A and wrap up with next steps. So for anybody that has joined any of our tech talks previously that I do, you've probably seen this screen before at least once or twice. But for anybody that hasn't joined before, I always like to start our tech talks with just being grounded around, at least in my opinion, the three kind of guiding principles or North Star of any successful MSP. And as a result of that, I always like to take whatever our content is or whatever we're talking about in the topic at hand and try to really think about how does it align with these three categories. So really, how do we increase profitability? How do we reduce time? And then how do we reduce risk, right? Mitigating risk is inherently one of the biggest things that MSPs face. And so what we like to do is take all of our talk track and kind of layer it into each of those three lanes. And today's conversation is really no different. When we think about MDM, it does actually kind of fit into each of those three categories. As we progress through the rest of today's session, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So thinking about the challenge that MSPs face, right? So when we think about them, a few key things really stick out to me. And so, as an MSP, you live at the intersection of protection and productivity. And so your clients expect you to keep them secure, but also make operations smoother. And all that has to happen without messing up your profitability. And so that's a tough, tall task, right? When you think about how do you stay competitive, you obviously have got to find ways to automate more. Your end clients are typically asking you to do more with less, but still deliver that really white glove experience. And so it makes it difficult, right? Especially when you think about how the cyber threat landscape is continuing to multiply and kind of shift. Now you think about managing more devices than ever, and that's kind of where MDM comes into play with phones, tablets, laptops. They're all scattered across all these different environments, and managing those in more of kind of a manual process really eats into that profitability. And you couple that with the cost of labor, inconsistency in being able to actually enforce those rules. All that adds up to a pretty big impact to your P&L. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we can help solve for that. The next section here is, a cybersecurity first world, and every endpoint is a potential breach anymore. If we're not proactively managing those security policies at the device level, we're really not protecting our clients. And when you think about, just even yourself, you probably do more things today on your cell phone than you do on your what I'd consider traditional endpoints, so your laptop, desktop. There's probably more work that happens throughout the workday on your cell phone or iPad than you may have done in the past. And so with MDM, we can use things to enforce encryption, remote wipe any kind of like a lost device, control applications, and ensure compliance from just one platform. And as we progress today, we'll talk through how we can turn a lot of these challenges into opportunities. For me, that's really what I like to do is how do we find ways to take all of the really difficult things that MSPs deal with day in and day out and turn them into a positive and help generate revenue. And, just to kind of capstone this slide here, for me, MDM isn't really about just protecting devices. It's about how do we package up a proactive device management solution into more of kind of a premium tier that your customers will pay for. So with that being said, why does MDM matter now more than ever? And there's a couple reasons. The first one is around just, the hybrid, work model. The modern workforce is everywhere. It's at home, it's at the office, it's on the road. You get this constantly shifting perimeter that as the MSP, you're tasked with securing, which isn't easy, right? And then you added BYOD on top of that. And so while that adds flexibility to your end clients, it does create a lot of complexity for MSPs. And so we have to protect, corporate information on a personal device without overstepping privacy. And a strong MDM strategy can really help embrace those trends, keep control over across those devices, and ensure compliance. The other one is, kind of to my point earlier about, people are using their cell phones for more and more things. And so as a result, threat actors are taking notice and, they're really shifting their focus now to mobile devices instead of what would be considered a traditional endpoint. So now all these cell phones, tablets, mobile devices are at the forefront of these cyber attacks, and they're on the rise. You think about phishing, malware, real rogue applications, even just a lost or stolen device, can lead to a costly breach. When you think about a security profile and overall strategy, I mean, at the end of the day, the weakest link in most security plans is the end user, right? So if you can find ways to help mitigate some of that risk that end users are going to do what they do, right? They're going to lose devices. They're going to try to do things that overstep traditional security measures. And so finding ways to circumvent that and still maintain a really solid perimeter is really critical. And then, the last one is centralized management. So, you know, traditionally in the MDM world, there's disparate tools, right? I mean, MSPs are managing laptops in one way, smartphones in another, tablets on something totally different. And this siloed approach leads to inefficiencies and also blind spots from a security standpoint. You couple that with how long it might take to do support tickets. That really creates a pretty big impact in overall profitability, but just also scalability and overall customer satisfaction. So finding ways to kind of work around that is critical. So, now that we've seen why MDM has become so important, with remote work, with, increased threats, the cost of managing all these devices is climbing every day. The big question for me really comes down to, how do we address these challenges and efficiently in a secure way? But then also, how do we drive profitability? Again, profitability is kind of near and dear to my heart. Before I was ever in the on the vendor side of things, I was in the MSP world, and to me, that revenue is lifeblood, right? Recurring revenue, and so to me, like that's probably one of the things that gets me most excited about Resolve MDM is that it does kind of fit right there in that purpose-built mode of how do we help MSPs solve for this. And so Resolve MDM gives total control over all those client devices without a really heavy lift. So that way you can secure more endpoints, you can serve more clients, and you can do it all with less friction, right? There's always that balance between security and friction to the end customer. And Resolve MDM does a nice job of striking that balance between the two, where we get the security we need, but we don't infringe on day-to-day interactions that the end user is going to use. But I just want to spend a minute and call out some of the key functionality that Resolve MDM has. And so one of the things that I think is really important for an MSP is cross-platform management. So thinking about iOS, Android, Windows, you can manage all of your different devices, phones, tablets, laptops, what have you, across all these different platforms in one place. So no more jumping from tool to tool, no more having inconsistent policies where maybe you have to do iPads in a certain motion, but maybe Android devices get a little bit different kind of look and feel to it. It gives you a lot of ability to kind of standardize. And that way, it also you'll determine exactly how your customer has to procure devices. So thinking about if you have a customer that it may be all in on iOS, or maybe they have a mixed bag environment where they have iOS and Android, they can still have freedom to, choose the devices that they need based upon, whether that's work requirements or whether that's, just overall, look and feel. They're not bound by requirements from a tool set perspective. The other thing I just wanted to spend a minute on too is real-time monitoring and policy enforcement. So, one of the things from a security posture is being able to see what's going on and eliminate blind spots. And so if you can get, visibility into a device's status, overall health of it, along with compliance, that's going to help you level up your security, but then also help enhance the overall, you know, just experience or being able to sleep good at night from an MSP standpoint. I mean, as an MSP, you inherit a lot of risk when you bring on a customer, and you kind of you get to inherit some of their bad habits. And so, by having a tool that will allow you to manage that effectively is critical. The other one is being able to remotely wipe, lock, even control applications that are downloaded. So as I mentioned before, I mean, end users are going to do what they do, right? Whether they lose a device, whether it's stolen, whether it's compromised, you can act immediately. In the event of a security incident, time is very important, right? So the sooner that you can see what's going on in real time, but then also take action in real time, the better that will be. It'll also reduce less of those kind of fire drill moments for your technicians to have to jump in and try to do something, and maybe they've got to fumble around with some existing tool sets. This is going to allow you to jump in and literally click a button. So you enhance your overall ability, but then also the overall experience out to that end customer. And then last thing on this slide, just to touch on, is our integration with GoToResolve. So GoToResolve is our RMM tool. So the combination of RMM and MDM all under the same roof is huge for an MSP. Because our MDM platform is built into the Resolve ecosystem, you're going to get things like remote support, ticketing, automation, all in one unified ecosystem. So that's going to allow for better management, better workflows, ultimately driving faster responses. And then ultimately with that, now profitability goes up. All right. So we've talked a little bit about the features and how powerful they are within our MDM tool set. But, to me, what really matters is how does it work in the real world? And so what I always love to do is I love to take really great things that are happening out there in our MSP community and our partners and share it, right? I love sharing best practices. That's one of the things I think is so amazing about the MSP community, is that everybody is willing to help and share and try to just drive overall success across the entire channel. And so I wanted to take just a couple key solutions here that we've seen in real world scenarios from a handful of our partners. And so the first one is efficiency and driving less time. And so, when you think about overall operational efficiency, being able to reduce that is going to obviously drive profitability, but it's going to allow you to do more with less and scale your business. And so one of our MSP partners, they're managing multiple devices across a handful of different managed clients, and by implementing Resolve MDM, they were able to significantly drop the overall ticket volume just through automation, right? So just by automating a handful of things, when you think about policy rollouts, that in and of itself was able to drop about half of their overall ticket volume. You couple that with the fact that then they were able to get real time status updates and alerts. It helped with some of that ticket fatigue that they were seeing, and then action on against things that really matter. And so ultimately, when you think about that, freeing up that tech time on more mundane tasks like that allows an MSP to take those technicians and go repurpose them for things that, you can charge real money for, things that are more of a strategic initiative. So like projects, consulting, customer facing things rather than chasing down, device compliance issues. The next one is just overall security and compliance. And so this one, I love this story just because in my MSP days, we were pretty heavy into HIPAA and overall healthcare. And from a compliance standpoint, that's critical. And so that's exactly the cool use case we have here. So we have a partner that a healthcare focused MSP. They were able to use Resolve MDM to enforce encryption, passcodes, and remote lock on field nurses. So they have a disparate group of nurses that travel the field in a pretty large geography, and that was actually one of the things that the MSP was really struggling with, trying to find a great way to lock those devices down, effectively check the box from a HIPAA standpoint, but not be so cumbersome that these nurses are bogged down. And so that's really where our MDM platform came into play. And one thing to note here, it not only improved the overall security, but they actually were in the process of doing a HIPAA audit, unbeknownst to them. Just if anybody's familiar with HIPAA, sometimes those things just get sprung on you. So a surprise audit. But they were actually able to show compliance, and that's the other thing around reporting, is being able to actually attest that you are doing the things you say you do from a security standpoint. That helped them be successful in that audit, and then obviously drives tons and tons of trust with the MSP and that end customer. So great story there. And then lastly, revenue, right? Again, revenue is the lifeblood for MSPs. And so we have an MSP partner that they took on MDM by adding basically an extra tier within their overall tech stack. And they package it as their mobile device protection plan. And, they charge a per device monthly fee, and we're able to increase their recurring revenues monthly without having to add a bunch of headcount, right? So they maintained their overall footprint as far as headcount goes, offering a new service, but then actually we're able to generate really nice profitability because implementing and executing is relatively easy. So a really nice way to generate revenue, another incremental, kind of diversified revenue stream, all within just being able to offer MDM. And so when you put all this together, right, I mean, saving time, improving security, and then strengthening those client relationships and adding extra revenue opportunities. I mean, to me, MDM isn't just a technical upgrade anymore. It's really a business growth driver. All right, so I know we've covered a ton today in a relatively short amount of time. So I thought it'd be really good to uh, do a bit of a recap, right? So we've covered the challenges, we've talked about the opportunities, we've covered some really cool real life, win stories here. But just as a way to kind of recap. So one thing to remember, so the overall landscape of MSP is way more complex than it probably has ever been. When you think about balancing security, efficiency, and profitability, you need to have the right tools and strategies. MDM is no longer optional when you think about the rise of remote work, bring your own device, and then the overall threat impact that is pointed towards mobile devices. It's critical for protection and just overall operational control. you know that's really where Resolve MDM comes in as a bit of a cross platform product, giving you real time monitoring, the ability to actually remotely action on devices and lock them down, all with really great MSP centric functionality. Lastly, we took a look at some use cases centered around efficiency, strengthening client security, and revenue streams. And so, all that being said, if you take just one thing away from today's call, MDM allows you to simplify operations, boost your client security, and drive new revenue for your business. And so, to me, it's not just about managing devices anymore. It's really about how do you position your MSP for sustainable growth. We know things are challenging in the tech space, and so if you can find ways to differentiate yourselves from other MSPs in your market, that's going to be a great lasting impression on the end customer, drive revenue, and make you way more effective as an MSP. All right, so I think we do have one more poll question, I believe, here at the end. While that's popping up, I will just to kind of recap, how do you get started, right? So thinking about some of the next steps, we do offer a free trial for Resolve MDM. I'll show that here on the next screen here in just a second to get you going, but we do have a QR code that allows you to take out a free trial. But aside from just a free trial, I also want to take just a second and talk about just some of the ways that we help our MSPs get going. And so, I have it on the screen here. Is guided onboarding. So we want to take a pretty active role in helping our MSPs get going. We know that for some of you, MDM is somewhat new. Even for your end customers is something new. So, we're here to help you not only make sure that you get everything set up from a product standpoint and your portal is looking good and tweaked and set up the way you need it to be, but then also we're willing to help have some of those conversations with those end customers and making sure that you have the right talk track. We also have tons of marketing collateral that can help kind of augment some of this conversation and give you a bit of a lead behind. And then lastly is support, right? We really want to make sure that we get you out of the gate strong and have a really good, first couple onboardings. That way you can embed this into your overall tech stack. We even help you with some ideas around pricing and packaging too, if I didn't mention that already. So with that, we will jump over to the next slide here. Oh, there we go. Computer was not going to catch up with me. So I'll leave this up on the screen here just for a second. So this is a QR code to take out our Resolve MDM trial. It's a 14-day trial, gives you full access. It's wide open, so there's no limitation there. So you get to go, effectively kick the tires. Like I said before, we can actually help get you going and make sure you're set up properly. And then the next slide here. So just one thing to note too. So I touched on it slightly in one of the slides earlier, but Resolve is our RMM platform, and that's one of the unique things about our ecosystem is that it gives you the ability to manage devices, whether that's MDM or traditional RMM, kind of endpoint style altogether. So I'll leave this one up just for a second too, but this is also if you wanted to take out a trial of our RMM tool, so giving you more of a centralized feel across all of your devices. All right. And just a quick kind of plug here. We will be out and about on the road. And I thought I'd just take a second here. So if anybody is in either the New Jersey area or Chicago, we have two in-person events coming up. So if you want to scan either of those QR codes, I know you guys are getting loaded up with QR codes here. The first one is Channel Pro in New Jersey. It actually is a matter of weeks from now. Really looking forward to that one. I'll give you a bit of a peek behind the curtain. We're going to be talking about some really cool AI stuff there. So if you're going to be in the area or be attending, looking forward to seeing you there. And then the other one coming up in June is an ASCII event in Chicago, which great time of year to be in Chicago in late June. The weather's awesome. So hopefully if you're going to be at that one, we'd love to see you there too. So with that, Danny, I think I'll turn it back to you to help us field some
Yeah.
questions.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. We have a couple questions I see that came through. Guys, it's not too late to submit more if you want to officially be considered for our raffle. So let me go ahead and kick off here. So the first question is, how is Resolve MDM tailored for MSPs?
Great question. So one of the cool things about our MDM platform is that first off, it's multi-tenancy, so which is kind of a table stakes kind of thing for MDMs, but or I mean, sorry, for MSPs, but it's going to allow you to securely manage, monitor, and support all of those end clients, across multiple organizations in a nice centralized place with dashboards and giving you the ability to do things like bulk enrollment or even just granular policy control. So giving you as much as you need or as little as you need to kind of right size the how you want to run it from an MSP standpoint.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. And I see another question here as well. How does Resolve MDM handle real-time data syncing across hybrid environments to make sure minimal latency and maximum reliability?
So I'm going to get super technical. And so there's an algorithm that happens. It pulls everything for an update in certain intervals. That way it doesn't get in the way of end customer usage or have this, huge latency as far as a gap in the time that it actually hit the system. So there's a bunch of different triggers that kind of go into effect that will figure out that algorithm. But it does vary environment by environment. I believe you can actually even change that in some of the policy settings of how fast it polls. But I mean, to kind of make it super simple in a matter of seconds. I mean, it'll poll pretty consistently, but not enough that it'll bog down the device and do things like degradation. Hopefully that
Perfect.
helps. That's a great question. Hopefully it helps answer
I
it.
think so.
All right,
Thank you,
cool.
Tony. Okay. This person said, sorry if I missed this, but just to recap, what OSs does Resolve MDM support?
Yeah, so we have them all. So iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, all of those all fit. So again, giving you a one-stop shop to manage all those different types of flavors.
Perfect. Is this platform something that is easy to input all of the information we need to into it, including invoicing and things like that?
So we don't have invoicing necessarily. Now we do have some integrations with some PSA vendors out there that would handle that invoicing part, but there is some import export functionality. Invoicing is not a function that we do natively, but there are some things you can do to kind of work around that or leverage one of our integrations.
Perfect. Awesome. And then another question we have here, what kind of reporting is available in Resolve MDM?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of different ones. Anything from analytical kind of, more deeper dive things around policies and things like that, but then also more of kind of a dashboard, kind of like executive summary kind of thing. So we have a whole swath of different ones depending upon what you're trying to solve for. I can tell you a lot of our MSP partners will lean into that more kind of executive summary for their end customers. It seems like it gives you just a good amount of information to show what's going on, but it isn't this overload of data.
Perfect. Great. Thank you, Tony. And I know we're coming up on time here, so I'll ask this one last question. Do you have any tips on how to position this for my customers?
Yes. Yeah. I think the biggest thing, you never want to go into creating a ton of fear, but I think that that is really important nowadays of really leaning into the fact that, this is a critical area that is at risk when you think about those devices and bringing up that conversation early, I think helps show your end customers that you're thinking about them, right? You're basically their trusted advisor when you think about technology. And so I think having real world scenarios, some great examples of kind of real life things, but then also highlighting the risk of not doing anything that typically seems to help with end customers. And then just to kind of add to that, we have a ton of content that we've already pre-built. We're also willing to help. So things from like, think of like a webinar in a box. We have some one pager kind of things. So we're glad to even do, what I consider kind of like co-selling, to help you get through those conversations early.
That's awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony.
Yep.
And that's all the questions we're able to get to today. If we miss any of your additional questions, don't worry. We'll try to follow up with you post webinar. So now, what everyone I think has been waiting for, we can go ahead to the next slide and officially announce our raffle winner today of our $25 Amazon gift card. And as let's see, our winner here. Okay, Paul Filio. I hope I said your name correctly. Thank you for submitting your questions. You had some really great ones there that Tony was able to cover, and you are officially our raffle winner. So we will make sure we get in contact with you after our webinar concludes to get that over to you. Thank you, everyone, for participating and all of your engagement during this amazing webinar. Tony, thank you for the great content. It was an awesome session.
You got it. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining us.
Absolutely. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.